sunny weather. It's getting a little too hot. I'm already like
I'm worried.
I'm I'm already such a wuss cuz like my friend from Texas is here and I'm going to show them around on sometime this week and it's going to be like 80 degrees and I'm going to be like sweating and like oh wait, slow down. And
Yeah,
meanwhile it's like 105 in Texas at any given moment.
dude, it was so hot in Austin. It was crazy.
It was hot and it was humid and it was miserable and the sun is so harsh.
Dude, it's
And
it's
it's
it's different. It's different there. When I was in Austin last week, it was like I was like, dude, is this what it always is like? Did I just forget what it was like? And they were just like, yeah, this is how hot it is every July or every June or whatever. And then I was like, and it's only gonna get worse, right? And they were like, yeah, it's only gonna get worse. I'm like,
it's
oh my God.
it's like almost an abomination. It's like how can I people can't live in that kind of heat.
It's crazy. I mean, there was so many people out and about. I was at a brewery. Everyone was like, kids were running around playing, and parents were drinking beers and eating, food trucks, and I was just like, dude, I don't remember it being this bad. But then also, like, I'm also super fucking uh spoiled because when my buddy visited me last summer, right around this time, I was apologizing. I'm like, guys, you guys got here like right when it got hot. Like, I'm sorry you're not experiencing like super nice, like San Diego weather. And they both kind of looked at me like, dude, this feels amazing. And when Christina's friends visited a few weeks ago, Christina was like, I'm so sorry, guys, it's so hot. And they were like, what? No, we just want to be outside all day. Like, this feels amazing. And they were like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's horrible in Austin. Just in the 90s most of the summer, in the hundreds sometimes.
Dude, I mean, I
And
think now pretty consistently they get like 100 days of 100-degree weather now.
oh my god, yeah, that's I can't do that.
No, like right now it got up to like real feel maybe like 88, 89
Yeah.
today. Which I didn't feel it because I've been inside all day, fucking hermit style. But Christina was like, dude, suffering. And
Oh man.
guess what the temperature is in Austin right now as we speak?
I'm gonna say 92.
99.
99.
It feels
Oh,
like 106.
oh my god. Yeah,
And
I
this is
do
the end of the
not.
day. Right now, we're recording, it's 5 p.m. in the afternoon and it's
Yeah, right.
99 and it feels like 106. So the high today must have felt like 110.
It's impossible to do anything in Austin. I remember like even when I lived there, like you couldn't be outside for too long with like for me without like sunscreen or like a hoodie or an umbrella or something.
Man, I was raw dogging playing disc golf like at 105-degree weather in Austin. Like it was nothing.
Oh man, I remember going out a couple times and just like thinking like god, it really feels like an oven outside. It feels like opening an
Yeah.
oven and it getting bashed in your face and I'm not to fucking, you know, whatever. If you like the hot, you like the hot, but it is so much better not living in Austin, living by the coast. There's usually a
Yeah.
nice wind, you know. Sometimes you can smell the sea salt in the air. It's real nice.
Yeah, but then before Austin, I was in New Orleans and New Orleans was somehow worse.
Yeah, New Orleans can get bad as well. I mean, Louisiana can get worse than Texas just because it's the swamps and it's all humidity and it's just like you're gonna sweat off your body weight within a couple hours of being outside.
Dude, yeah, the high was like fucking 97, 98 every day I was there. Like right now it's 97 at 5 p.m. in the afternoon. Like, and it's in humidity is like 1,000%. It's like, dude,
It's
I don't
yeah,
know. Like I sometimes complain that we don't have central, neither of us, me or you, have central air conditioning.
yeah,
And sometimes I like feel sorry for myself about that. And I get kind of annoyed because now we are really getting into like the summer days in San Diego where it's going to feel like, 95 outside a
yeah.
lot. Not having central air is kind of a game changer with that. But then, dude, at night it still gets to like 68.
Right. You at least
Yeah.
have this like relieving time of the night. I also I still don't understand why they didn't have AC. It's so weird to me that most like housing doesn't have AC. But I mean 90 in Seattle is still 90.
That's what I mean.
Like
It's like people give a shit and they're like, oh, whatever, dude. It's only 90 degrees. 90 degrees is fucking hot.
yeah.
Like, it's not like 90 degrees is not hot. It's just
Like
that,
when I
it's not 105.
I've told this story before, I think, but the first summer I moved here, I only ever bought myself a box fan. So I was like, man,
Yeah.
nah, this isn't nothing. I just came from Texas, it's not going to affect me. But just being inside, and it was getting in the 80s and 90s that first year I was there,
Yeah.
and it doesn't like it doesn't matter if you
Is
don't
it?
have some fucking like fresh air. If
It's
you don't have
true.
some like air flowing, it's
Like
just
90
miserable.
degrees is still fucking hot. Like, I wouldn't want to be in Texas at 90 degrees without air conditioning either.
No,
Like,
no.
it's so, yeah. But I mean, is it the same in Seattle as it is in San Diego where when it gets hot, the wind also dies? Like, in the summer, there's no breeze usually in San Diego. That's the killer. Because it's like it might be 70 degrees at night, but the air's not moving. So
Mm,
if you don't have a
yeah.
fan on in your apartment or whatever, your apartment's still fucking hot.
Yeah, no, yeah, it could get pretty bad. I think usually Seattle's pretty fine about it. I think the wind is pretty consistent, but
I'm waiting for that hammer to drop, man, because right now it's still a little
uh,
breezy here, and I'm like, dude, when the wind stops, even nighttime's gonna be really uncomfortable, probably. So like, and that's just for a few months, it is what it is. Like we fucking if 70% of the year the weather's amazing and and I'm so comfortable all day every day, I'm like, I can deal with the 30% discomfort,
yeah.
honestly.
I mean, I don't know. I'm also just getting spoiled here.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I mean that's we're fucking paying for it. If
yeah,
we,
that's true.
so like I don't give a shit, man. If anyone gives me shit that the weather is better here than in Texas, I'm like, yeah, and I'm paying twice as much in rent. So
Yeah.
fucking shut the fuck up or move here and pay as much as me. And then, like, Jesus.
Try to find a fucking meal here under $12,
Yeah,
dude.
exactly. Dude, oh my God. I had such sticker shock in New Orleans and Austin, but the other way, where it's like, what
Yeah.
is this cheap? Like, we went to some, I mean, it was a shitty bar in New Orleans, like kind of like they all are. But we went to this bar. I got 2 glasses of wild turkey whiskey, which is like not, it's not amazing, but it's not bottom shelf whiskey, and a pint of beer, $18 total.
Oh man.
I'm like, dude, that glass of wild turkey in San Diego would have been $18 alone.
Yeah.
And I got
Yeah.
two and a beer for I was like, wow, this is crazy. And I was telling my buddies who live in San Antonio, they're like, dude, move to San Antonio, man. We still got pints for like $4, $5. I'm like, yeah, and then I'm in fucking San Antonio. Like, I'm sorry. Like, if I have to live in America, I'm gonna live in a city that's fucking worth living in rather than just living in a place because it's cheaper. I'm like, if I'm gonna do that, I can move to fucking Mexico. I'd much rather live in a cheaper place in Mexico than live in San Antonio or Dallas or
I
fucking Tucson. My dad tried to convince me to move to Tucson a few years ago. It's
Oh, really?
103 in Tucson right now. Fuck
That's
you.
I that's I feel like that's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, my dad
I
was like,
don't
move
know,
to
man.
Raleigh or move to Tucson. I was just like, you
Yeah,
move to
it's not
Raleigh.
fucking happening.
I was like, you
I
fucking do that.
you I don't we've had multiple festivals in Austin. I would go to some Austin City Limits, festivals.
Yeah.
Um and there would be artists that couldn't perform because their computers kept physically overheating
Right.
from the heat.
Right.
And like it didn't matter how many fans they had on, it didn't matter if there was shade. The computers would just fucking fuzz out because it
Yeah.
was like too hot for technology.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, yeah. It's kind of it's like I still think we're allowed to complain when it's hot,
Sure.
but I get why people
That's all
don't
right.
want us to complain, but it's my right to bitch that it's fucking hot and I don't have central air. Like that's the thing that everyone forgets about. Everyone just thinks that we just have like gorgeous weather and we have the same infrastructure as Texas does or
I
whatever. And
wish,
it's like,
man.
no,
I,
that's not the case. Even in New York City, a lot of people don't have central air conditioning, and it gets hot as fuck in the summer. They're allowed to complain.
I like apparently 4 years ago it was not a problem with Seattle. It was like no one ever needed air conditioning because it was just fine.
Yeah.
And that shit will not fly anymore.
I
It's
mean,
like
right now
fuck,
it is
man.
73 in Seattle on July 1st.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Tomorrow the high is 69.
Hell yeah.
But then it's like 84, 91. And it's like, yeah, but it gets pretty
It's
cold there at night, huh? It's like 59 degrees at night.
yeah, yeah,
That's
it's
pretty
nice.
awesome.
Yeah, and it fluctuates a lot. I don't know. This weather's fucking all over the place, just like our featured artist of today in our episode. Uh, the episode being Earbuds. What's up, buds? Welcome to another episode of Earbuds. The episode called Earbuds.
Masterful.
I am Ash. Joined with me, as always, is Lucas. This is where two good friends talk about one good album for a good amount of time. Today, we're talking about an album I brought on. Uh, that is it's a bit of a journey,
It's
I'd
a
say.
weird one, man. It's a weird one.
It's an odd journey, and it's not a short album. Usually, I don't bring in albums that are like over 45 minutes if I can help it.
I mean, if we had listened to the deluxe edition, it would have been two
Oh
hours
God,
long.
yeah,
But yeah, we're talking about Hello Nasty by Beastie Boys, and it has been a long
yes,
time since I've listened to this album as a whole, sitting down, and it was very eye-opening as like, dude, I was jamming this record a lot when it came out. Like I bought the CD and was listening to it all the time. I
hmm
do not remember it being this off the wall and like off kilter and fucking
yeah,
interesting and weird. And I don't know why it surprised me because the Beastie Boys have always done weird stuff in their career and they started out as a punk band and then they became a hip
yeah,
hop group. And so they have a lot of this history and they kind of incorporate a lot of like weird things into the mix. But I feel like the addition of Mixmaster Mike on this album, like really, really pushed their eclecticness over the
yeah,
edge.
yeah. You get the feeling on all these songs they all have such interesting and varied influences throughout the music
Yeah.
and just pulling from weird places and weird samples. If you had just heard the hits by the Beastie Boys, you might hear like Sabotage or
Fight
I
for
don't
Your
know,
Right to Party.
and
No,
you
No
might
Sleep Till Brooklyn, Intergalactic.
I
Like
think
these are all very different sounding songs from each other.
it would be very reasonable if you thought that they didn't know how to play instruments and that they weren't
Right.
playing instruments. They do a lot of that on this record. And of course, they have most of it is that classic Beastie Boys, um, kind of finding a dancey sample, hyping each other up, going through, partying, kind of having a good time. But the other half of this record is like consists of like these groovy jams or these
Yeah.
very slow tempo
Like
songs.
jazzy instrumentals, and there's like
Yeah,
bossa nova, and there's drum and bass, and it's a lot of stuff that like I didn't remember from this record
yeah,
because to be fair, Intergalactic is the only song, after I put down the album and moved on with my life, like Intergalactic was the song that always stuck around from this record, and it's
yeah.
next to Sabotage is my favorite Beastie Boys song,
It's
but it's
pretty
like
good.
it's pretty fucking good, and it's it was really eye-opening. So Ad Rock, one of the three guys in this band, it's Ad Rock, MCA, and who's the
Mike
third
D.
one? Mike D. So I think Mike D is the one with like the super nasally voice, right?
I can never keep him
Could
straight.
never keep him up. Yeah. So Ad Rock, well, Mike D I think is my favorite, but Ad Rock said that he thinks Hello Nasty is BC Boys' best record.
And I have to agree.
I
I
think
agree
I agree.
wholeheartedly with
I
that.
think I agree. Paul's Boutique is this really weird outlier for Beastie Boys that it almost doesn't even feel like a Beastie Boys record half the time. And I love Paul's Boutique. But this album, I'll admit, like the first listen through, I was pretty bored. And I was like, oh no, everything sounds the same. But then there are some outliers in this. So, quick background, came out in 1998.
Mm,
Um, Hip hop was pretty fucking boring at this time. Like Ja Rule was one of the top dudes in 1998. Like, DMX was kind of just starting to do movies, so his music wasn't, in my opinion, that great anymore.
yeah. Well,
Notorious
I think
B.I.G. dead, Tupac dead, fucking Jay-Z was just starting to kind of blow up, right? And it's like we had this time in hip hop where gangster rap had completely taken over in the scene. And if
mm,
you weren't gangster rap, you weren't really popular. And it was really hard for you to get radio play. And here comes Beastie Boys with this like ultimate party hip hop record that is also fucking weird and super playful. And they are, but it's my favorite combination of any band, of any musical group is when they're playful, but they're fucking good. And
yeah,
it's like when
and
you don't
and
take yourself
that's
that seriously. And that's what this album is.
that's a BC Boys trademark.
Yes.
Is that you never know what the fuck their lyrics are gonna be about. You never know what references they're gonna make, what words they're gonna fucking say.
And they're not really saying much, to be honest. Like
No, I
they're
mean
kind of just like saying goofy, weird, funny, interesting lines. It's not there's never a message. There's never a
it's hardly ever yeah, it's hardly ever anything more than like bravado and just like I don't know, bragging mixed with like I don't know, just coming up with weird lines, you
yeah, it's
know?
more coming up with weird lines and then also um I think the most bravado that they do is obviously just like we're the best and blah blah blah, but a lot of it is like they're talking shit about how much hip hop knowledge they have in a lot of this. Like there's so many. Okay, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. More of the background. This album debuted at number one.
Mm,
It sold over 600,000 copies in the first week, and I think this album was so huge. Like Body Movin' and Intergalactic were like huge, huge, huge hits.
yeah.
They spanned multiple. Like they were like inter-genre hits. Like everyone loved those songs at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
And when I was going into this, I was trying to think like this was such a huge cultural moment in hip hop and like pop music in general. Um, but no one was really talking about how great the album was at the time. It was just kind of those singles were just so huge, but there weren't any like deep cuts that people were really talking about or, oh man, you think Intergalactic's good? You guys, stepping on
Yeah.
your game or whatever is amazing. Um, does this album hold up? Is the kind of the angle that I was trying to come at when I was listening to it because again, such a impactful album when it came out, but like no one's talking about Hello Nasty 25 years later,
No.
and does it hold up? Is it as good as everyone thought it was at the time for being number one, selling over 500,000 in the first week? These two singles being massively huge,
Yeah.
iconic music video with Intergalactic, and it's just like, what is there anything worth listening to on this record 25 years later?
And what did you come to with that question?
I think it's a complicated answer because the Beastie Boys, it's kind of crazy to me hearing this. This album was released 1998. I assume they recorded it the year before, 97. It's kind of crazy that they were keeping this old school hip hop sound well into the late 90s. The Run DMC kind of Public Enemy, LL Cool J type 80s hip
Yeah.
hop sound, the Beat Boy, B-Boy stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy that they kept that going well into the 90s and even continued after this. But it's like this is an album that came out in 1998. Jay-Z and Ja Rule are probably at the top of the charts right now in hip hop. And it's like this shit sounds goofy as hell compared to those guys. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot of the back and forth of the cadence. You know, like
Yeah,
that type
yeah, of
of
course the
group.
Beastie Boys coming in on like the last word of each phrase or whatever.
Tons of finishing each other's lines,
Yeah.
tons of like switching word for word. Man, who, say, ha, well, you know, like all three of them kind of like rapping at the same time.
Yeah.
That's all kind of it should have been played out by 1998, but I think it's like I think it was like so refreshing in 1998 to hear this type of fun hip hop again that I think that's why it had such a cultural impact. So it's like then listening to it for me 25 years later, I think we need more bands like this, man.
Man, I think we do too. Like you ask if this is relevant in 2024 basically.
Yeah.
Um and I think it very well could be. I think this album is definitely held up. I think it might be,
Production wise, it's held up very well.
yeah, production wise it's held up very well. I think the many different areas of music that the Beastie Boys pull from throughout this record makes it very interesting throughout the whole thing. This is a 23 song record, if I remember
Jesus.
correctly.
22, I think.
An hour long.
Yeah.
And just like, I'm used to these bloated hip hop albums that like kind of have like these 8 filler songs for whatever reason. You know, I
Right.
don't know why.
If it's not a filler song, it's a fucking skit.
But I'd say I don't there are a couple flyovers, but most of the songs on this record are great in their own right and I feel are interesting just cuz like the Beastie Boys had a history of always trying new shit and trying to find their own sound in this like kind of very niche like hip hop group
Yeah.
thing that they had, you
Never
know?
boxing themselves in. I mean, when you think about you know, the biggest hip hop acts of today, like Migos and fucking, I don't know, Ray Sremmurd or like these like, you know, not a big act, but like clipping. Like you think of these more experimental hip hop acts that aren't falling into the pop tropes, or at least you know people like Migos who invented their own pop tropes at this point. Like Migos were like 5, 6, 7 years old when this album came out, and then you see how they dress, and you see how like bombastic they are and outlandish. All these like new hip hop, like Lil Uzi Vert, and you know all these guys that it's like they grew up with the Beastie Boys as an example of you know good hip hop.
Yeah.
I think I think it's like the impact of the Beastie Boys on today's hip hop, I think is pretty rampant and pretty obvious when you like take a step back and look at it. But I think, you know, after a certain point, if you listen to enough Beastie Boys or if you've heard all their singles, because those are the ones that get popular, I don't
Yeah.
blame people for thinking that every single Beastie Boys song sounds exactly the same.
Yeah, I mean their cadence and the flow they have with each other is pretty consistent across all their like hip hop tracks, their hip hop based tracks.
Yeah.
The thing is they have so much more to offer in my opinion. They have a couple instrumentals on this album.
I was gonna say, like there are some standout songs. There are some outliers on this record that became some of my favorites on the album, like Songs for the Man, Flowing Prose,
Mm,
and Me, Song for Junior, I Don't Know, Picture This, Instant
yeah.
Death. All of those songs are it sounds like a lot of it sounds like a lot, like when I name that many, and ones where it's like, oh, there are actually some weird tracks on here. But that's 7 out of 22 tracks, you know? So like, but 30% of this record are weird instrumental, jazzy, trippy, psychedelic, full band songs that are not used as interludes, are not used as skits. They are full on, fully produced, fully written tracks that are just like, yeah, we wanted to include this on the record too. And I think
Yeah.
I, they don't feel out of place. They're way out of left field with all the other tracks, but they don't feel out of place because it's the Beastie Boys, you know?
No, yeah, it's just it's interesting how a band can have such a varied sound that all has the core of the band itself.
Right.
you know?
Right.
And I don't know. They just have a very singular personality. They're just some like I don't know, white boys from the boroughs or whatever from New
Right.
York.
I mean, there are three Jewish guys from New York that never talk about being Jewish or from New York. You know, it's like that's
They
who they
literally have an
are.
album called "To the Five Boroughs."
I mean, what I'm saying is like they never bring up that it's almost like, you know, how people call out what makes them different before other people can call it out. So it's like, oh, Eminem on a lot of his songs would be like, well, yeah, I'm just a white boy, you know, stealing from black culture. And hey, I'm going to say it before you fuckers can say it. And, you know, like
Sure.
I
Yeah.
think the Beastie Boys could have easily gone that route, be a little self-deprecating you know, kind of, hey, we get it, you know, three white dudes doing, you know, doing the thing that white people love to do, steal from black people. And then but it never feels, it's like they never reduce themselves to that because they just prove themselves over and over again that it's like, no, we belong in this culture just as much as anyone else. And like again, like the influence that have come from them is you can't argue with it. So it's like
Yeah.
it I love that they kind of don't make that a part of their identity. You know what I mean? And it's like their identity is just fun and just big hip hop heads, good musicians, and
Yeah.
like, we're gonna write the best record that we can write and have the most fun that we can while we do it. And it's like I think the Beastie Boys are just a definition of a great party band. Like they've always been just having a good time. They don't really talk about anything like we mentioned. Like they don't raise issues or they don't get vulnerable ever. They're just
They
good times, and I think we need more of it. And this album is just like so over the top and so overblown that I don't know if anyone has exceeded it since. I don't think anyone's outdone this
damn.
record in terms of like how over the top and huge and weird it is, and it was. I can't think of any hip hop
I
group that has really exceeded this.
I mean it's very bombastic, it's very cool, it's very interesting throughout the whole thing. They do they do have a couple songs where they like seem to delve into kind of more serious matters. Um like Song for the Man and Instant Death, but they're very few and far between.
Yeah, and if
Uh
you're not, even then, they don't even get that serious, you know? Like they don't get that deep.
yeah, I don't know, it just
They're like
seems
kiddie pool, you know, they're just in shallow waters. That's the deepest they can get.
but it's I don't know if you've heard of a group called Joey Valence and Bray.
No.
No, they were kind of like got famous on TikTok and have
That's why I don't know them.
started to make a career of their own. And it's basically just like what if BC Boys started making music in like 2020.
Okay.
And it's just very interesting to see like what that means and what they pull from, and they just like reference. It's like kind of the same deal. They kind of reference the shit in their lives at the moment, and they have all these old samples that they're kind of flipping. Um, and that's I don't know. That's one of the things I love about BC Boys is that they really won't seem to turn down an idea for like
Right.
how can we make this something that we like? How can we turn this like instrumental like electrify where it
Right.
has this kind of old clangy piano um and they just like flip it and they just make it put a fucking beat on it and make it interesting.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's like to fans, like to general fans of music, the Beastie Boys are just going to be fun. But I think for musicians and for like really, really deep fans of music, the Beastie Boys are just this multi-layered, multicultural
Yeah.
group that it kind of defies expectations, and I think would be easily dismissed by people who just want to listen to radio pop. It's like, yeah, intergalactic, yeah, you know, like um Sabotage, great pop songs, great rock songs or whatever, but it's like,
Yeah.
but you know, what like are there, you know, all these people just revere the Beastie Boys, and it's hard to really quantify or qualify why a lot of people do, or it was hard for me. And I read a quote that I was like, dude, this guy said it perfectly. And it was a guy over at consequence.net. He did kind of like a retrospective on this album a few years ago. and I think it was probably on the 20th anniversary. His name's John Flynn, and he said, uh, he goes, "It's an album that, if played in the company of less musically obsessed listeners, would probably get switched off after a few tracks. Because let's be honest, how many of us are chomping at the bit to research and give context to the album's dozens upon dozens of samples? Still, the Beastie Boys' attention to detail is exactly what makes Hello Nasty and all of their albums so enjoyable in the first place. Because it's like you really can, like in the first three or four songs on this record, there are like uh Cool Keith and Run DMC references, and not just the lyrics, but in the beats.
Mm,
There's all this like history hip hop knowledge happening.
yeah.
In this album, there's like tons of references that if you're not in, you don't know what they're talking about. So it's like this is just as good a record to put on at a party and just kind of vibe out and not even listen to it. It's just as good as that as it is to sit down and fucking try and study it and break it apart.
Yeah, sure. I think it's pretty dense in a weird way. It is I think it deserves to have a finer eye on it, you
Yeah.
know, and I
And
feel
I'm
like
not
it's always
qualified.
me neither.
Yeah.
But I remember picking up this CD because it had Body Moving in an Intergalactic. I
Right.
picked it up and just going through the record and just thinking like I don't know. It's just an interesting fucking album with a lot of weird stuff happening, and it always makes it for kind of a fresh listen when you go back. I it is odd because the first half of the album is a lot more what you would expect of the Beastie Boys,
Yes.
and it's kind of towards the second half that you run into all those songs like "Sneaking Out the Hospital" or like "Flowing
Picture this.
Prose," "Picture This," "Song for Junior," you know, all that
Dr. Lee,
stuff.
PhD,
Yeah.
with Lee Scratch Perry, which is like such a crazy, amazing get for them that I almost can't believe that they got him on this record. I love that like Biz Markie is just peppered throughout this record of just like hanging out in the studio with them. I think that's so fucking cool. R.I.P. Biz Markie and MCA. Like
Yeah.
like those are two huge artists that are like sorely missed today. Um, but I think like that cues up my next point about this record, which I think was makes it such a standout for me, is Mixmaster Mike, the DJ and producer.
Because this was the first album he did with the Beastie Boys. The album before this was Watch Your Head?
I think it was either
Or,
that or Ill Communication. There was 4 years in between records for them.
well, uh, uh, Ill Communication? In any case, this is the first one that he got on, and I feel like you can hear his influence throughout the record.
Yeah,
And especially like watching live videos of like three MCs and one DJ,
right.
and just seeing this like I don't know this kind of relationship with their DJ that seems almost kind of particular, you know, and unique to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like no one understands Beastie Boys more than Mixmaster Mike. I think it's
I
and then they gave him all the creative freedom he could have ever wanted to just do whatever he wanted to do. And he just showed the fuck up on
and
this
I'm
album.
I bet they were excited to hear all the weird shit he was pulling in.
I think this album cements him as one of the best DJs in hip hop ever.
I do wonder about I haven't listened to any I don't think I've listened to much of the records after this one. Like Hot Sauce Committee Part 2 or
Yeah.
Five Boroughs. Um
I didn't either, to be honest. That's what I mean. It's like, love the Beastie Boys. They never had a huge impact on me. It was just Intergalactic is probably one of my favorite hip hop songs ever. And then that's kind of it. It's like I'm a fan of all of their singles, but like I did not stick around, you know?
yeah, I don't know. They got a lot of good stuff in here. I want to Oh man, I mean, how else do we talk about this album? Do you want to just get to the ratings? Like,
Yeah, I honestly, like I just to finish my point on Mixmaster Mike, I think he fits in so perfectly with these guys also because he's playful, but he's not faking the funk. Like he's
No.
also weird and goofy and wants to kind of make some goofy shit, but it's like he's legit and he displays it on every single one of these songs. Perfect for Beastie Boys.
Mm.
Um, and honestly, a lot of the beats, I wanted to see what you thought of this because it's kind of a hot take, but it's something I noticed and it really stood out to me. A lot of the beats reminded me of some of Action Bronson's most off the wall beats that he's used in his career.
Yeah?
A, a lot of it is just like, dude, where is this? Like we already mentioned, like where's this bossa nova? Where's this D&B coming from? Where's this like random rock sample? Where's this,
Yeah.
and the playfulness of it and the goofiness of it, but then the grounding of like, yeah, but I'm still a fucking badass. So it's like I might
Yeah.
have a goofy fucking beat with a turbo playing on it, but it's like that's not gonna make you dismiss me at all because you know that it's like I can be this goofy and I'm still gonna fucking bring the ruckus.
Yeah,
You know what I
right.
mean? So
Yeah.
it maybe the vibe, the confidence behind the beats like really reminded me a lot of Action's weirder stuff. Um, and again, every beat is like 5 or 10 samples from like hip hop legends or TV shows or commercials or movies or weird random international obscure artists. And it's
Yeah.
just really cool. It makes me appreciate it even more. If you want to take time and like really break down this record, you just have this massive smorgasbord of things to look into and research and digest and dissect. But Mixmaster Mike is like, I think one of the only DJs that can turn one of hip hop's like most in-depth history lessons that is Hello Nasty into a super fun dance party. And it's like if you don't want to take the time to notice, you don't have to. But if you
It's
do,
great at
it's
both.
a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fucking awesome. And weirdly enough, the handful of songs on here that were like very little vocals or no vocals at all ended up being some of my favorites on the album.
I really love the jams. I really liked the kind of deep cuts of this record, you
Yeah,
know?
I do too. And it's something that I feel like no one talks about.
Yeah, I almost found like I mean, I guess this is my personal history with the song. I've been listening to Intergalactic for a long time now as well.
Yeah.
But when put side to side with these other songs, you almost wonder like, why did this particular song do so much better?
Yeah, I
You
mean, how
know?
is no one sending me like Song for Junior just to jam randomly? Like, how
Right,
has that
yeah.
not been shared with me throughout the years? Like, how is Sneaking Out the Hospital not just a random track on some random coffee shop playlist? It's like
But
no
yeah.
one's talking about these songs, and it's like these are forgotten, ignored treasures that are just being lost to the ether. And I loved going back to this album and rediscovering those songs and realizing probably back in the day I probably skipped them. That's why I don't remember.
Well, I mean, it's a like 22 song album again,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like the first time I heard it, it was kind of a tough listen as well because I liked the Beastie Boys songs, but then all this other shit kept happening, and I
Yeah.
just like didn't understand what was going on, and even there were even some kind of odd Beastie Boys esque songs,
There's a
like
lot of weird shit on here.
like Dedication is kind of a weird one, just because it's just them like referencing places or people with this beat behind it, but that's all it is?
I mean, yeah, stuff like the negotiation limerick file and the grasshopper unit.
Yeah,
Like
right.
all of these are just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what is this? And then you just have, like just Beastie Boys songs like Super Disco Breakin' and, Remote Control
Mm.
but then you have like Just a Test that almost sounds like a DJ Shadow beat that the Beastie Boys are rapping over. It's just like they had so much material to go over. But yeah, I think we're obviously going to talk about like a bunch of honorable mentions and
Yeah,
choice nugs and everything. So like,
yeah.
let's do ratings. Like after everything we said, what are you rating this album?
After everything we've said, I think it's hard to ignore how long this album is, you
I
know?
love that automatically gets negative points for you. It seems like no matter
I
what, it's like, dude, if it's over 45 minutes, you're not going to get a 9. I'm sorry.
It's so tough, but this album in particular, I don't know. There's enough shit that like I'm usually pretty captivated and I'll hardly ever stop it before listening to the full thing.
Yeah.
You know, I personally think that like the last four songs are kind of whiffs. Um I
Except for
like
Instant Death. I think Instant Death is such a ballsy off for this record.
yeah, I you know, it's just such a how do you end a record like this? Like what song do you choose? And they chose probably the most like soft, quiet song that
Yeah.
develops into something a little weirder
Like a
and just kind of
jazzy drum and bass
yeah,
thing with a
right.
female vocalist who shows up every now and then on the record, but it's like to not end this album with just a classic Beastie Boys party
Right.
song, I think is very gutsy, and I
I
appreciated it.
I mean the second to last song is like a straight up reggae song,
Yeah, like a dub
right?
reggae
And
song.
like a dub reggae song and
Yeah.
I don't know. The whole it's interesting throughout. Um I love the performances, the lyrics are always fun. I'm you know it's tough. I think I'm going to give this one an 8.8.
God damn.
I it's really tough. I was really debating whether to give it a 9 or not. Um I
Wow.
think I think any person could reasonably give it a 9 and I would not argue with them at all.
Yeah.
I think there's just kind of the way the album finishes, that like last quarter of the album is always kind of a skip to me
Mm,
for whatever reason. But just the fact that it can keep my attention for like 22 tracks,
yeah.
I think is saying a lot. Um, and yeah, I don't know. Interesting music, great vocals, so dynamic, yet so fun the whole time. You know?
Like all three guys probably at the top of their game.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean,
What about you, my man?
8.8 is so high. I'm not going to go that high. And a lot of has to do with the process that we go through for these shows that it's like I don't there are albums like these, like this one, like MF Doom, the Danger, the Mouse and the Mask one that we
Yeah,
talked about. Like there are some records that I prefer to listen to it casually.
sure.
And when it comes to sitting down and trying to analyze and break it down, it is a kind of daunting and difficult for some of these, especially like for stuff like this and for MF Doom.
Yeah,
And B, it kind of takes away from the the whole point of the album for me.
yeah, sure.
So listening to this, just driving around or fucking going on a walk or something, or just hanging out, having drinks with friends, this album is a nine. But because I had to sit down and really try and analyze it and try and figure out what made it so impactful and what continues to make it impactful and kind of trying to give it this cultural relevance and trying to really figure out like, things beyond just my own enjoyment of the record,
Yeah,
it makes me enjoy it less because I don't enjoy doing that part when it's such a dense record to have to do that with. So
sure.
but then again, it's like that makes a dip, that makes a score dip a little bit, but then it comes back up when I really start kind of filling in those blanks. So it doesn't ruin the album for me. It almost like I meet in the middle a little bit because it's like, well, what I would rather this be a fun party album, which is a solid nine if it's a fun party album. When you realize how much work it will take to really break down and understand like what makes it so good, the work kind of makes me like it a little bit less, but then the appreciation of all the things I discovered through that work bring it back up. So I kind of meet somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to give it an 8.5.
Okay. All right.
It
That's
it would
still very nice.
Yeah, if we were just talking about like how much fun I would have listened to this record on any given day, it's a solid nine, like no doubt.
But
But it's
I
like, yeah, that little extra work you have to put in brings it down a little bit, and it doesn't go back up to a nine with my appreciation of all the little details that I discovered. It just more kind of makes me appreciate it in a different way.
Yeah. I mean, I think my appreciation for this album was increased with that critical eye,
I would
you
think it
know.
would be for me too. I think for them, like I expected it to be, and I was just like, no, I really want to dive in. Like we were supposed to record this last week, and I was like, I'm not ready. Like I really want to dive in. I really want to do a lot
Hmm.
of research. And then after doing it, I was like, okay, really fucking cool. But there was a lot of research. There's a lot of stuff.
But
I
they
read.
never ask you
They never ask you
to
to do
do
that.
that work.
No, they never ask you to do that. And that's what I mean. I'm like, if I hadn't put that on myself, I think my overall enjoyment of the record would have been higher.
Well, okay. Well, let's talk about some nugs. Let's talk about some choices.
Intergalactic, best song on the record.
I think Intergalactic
Come on.
definitely gets my honorable mention.
What?
Here's the
That is
thing.
not a choice, Nug?
Intergalactic is great. I've been listening to it a lot for a long time.
Uh-huh.
And it was one of the few music videos on my iPod. I think it's a great fucking song. It's very fun, but it's not one of my favorites on this record.
That's crazy to me. It is one of my favorite hip hop beats of all time.
Really?
Dude, yes. It's so loud. It's such a loud beat and it's so like chaotic and and kind of like retro futuristic, you know?
Yeah, well, it kind of has that like almost like a retro like Godzilla movie or something.
Yeah.
Is I think
Yeah.
what they were kind of trying to channel here with like space involved, space and robots or something.
Space and time.
Space and time.
Yeah, that's I think it's like it feels to me as what the people in the 40s or 50s thought the future was going to look like. Like that's what this beat feels like, you know?
Sure, yeah.
And just that boom, boom, and it's like it took me a while to realize that they're rapping in cadence with the snare and the kick. And it's like boom, boom, ba, boom, boom, ba. It's just like, dude, this is such a b-boy fucking 80s hip hop New York beat, you know?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
And that like they're following the kick and the snare. And I didn't realize that for the longest time. And I was like, that like the beat dictated the cadence, and that cadence is so Beastie Boys now, and it's just like, dude, Mixmaster Mike just fucking like
He's
blowing my
crazy,
mind
man.
even more, dude. Like what a perfect
Crazy.
fit. And I mean, legendary beat, legendary flow, already mentioned, legendary music video. This whole song, in my opinion, is just like
Yeah.
100% iconic 90s hip hop to a T.
Yeah, I think that's extremely fair.
And it's one of my favorite hip hop tracks of all time. This song is
Damn.
better than any Tupac song, in my opinion.
Holy shit. That's fucking wild to say. With
I'm
the middle
I'm
fingers up, he's a little
I
bad
I'm of
boy.
the class that Tupac is overrated. And
Damn.
I'll die on that fucking hill if I have to. I don't care.
Well, I can't say I got any stake in that game. I have not listened to a lot of Tupac. Yeah.
I don't honestly, it's like everything he did has been done better since. Well, let's not go down that
Jesus
rabbit hole.
Christ.
What is one of
Uh,
your choice nugs then? If this is a freaking honorable mention.
um. Well, one of my choices. Uh. Man, I don't think I could even go through my honorable mentions. It would
Are there
probably
too
be
many?
like
Because I have a few.
I feel like it'd be a little too many. I just love a lot of things about a lot of these songs. I guess if I had to pick a couple, um, uh, fuck, uh, "Song for the Man"
Yeah.
is up there as well
I
as
love the pop lounge kind of vibe.
yeah,
Yeah.
"Jigga Jung," like that, like real delayed
Yeah.
fucking guitar.
That one's part specifically. I love honestly all my honorable mentions are all the weird tracks.
Yeah, I love those tracks. It was a tough fight for the first choicey. Between that and like I don't know and picture this. But my first choice is gonna be my favorite. It's all these songs fight for superiority as my favorite song on the record. Right now, this is my favorite song on the record. It's Remote Control.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if you expected it. I don't know if you'd like care like even noticed that song very much.
I noticed it, and that was the first one that I was like, this feels like an Action Bronson beat.
That could be very true. It's very guitar driven. It's
Yeah.
got that riff burner, burn, burn, down. I think it's a catchy riff.
Do-do-do-do-do.
I love
Yeah,
their delivery across this whole thing. Things get hectic quick. I'm on the phone and I'm in the slit. I just love the music. I love how the beat comes in. Remote control. Remote. I want control.
it's weird,
Uh,
man. It's weird. It's like hearing this, I'm just like, Action Bronson's listened to a lot of Beastie Boys.
I bet he has.
First kind of indication I ever got of that, I'm like, that makes a lot of fucking sense. Yeah, Remote Control's a great song.
Yeah, I love it. And yeah, God, tough fucking fight for choices. I've been going back and forth all week, but
Yeah. I mean,
I'm
that's the thing is
excited to
like
hear your second one.
outside of Intergalactic, I feel like all the other hip hop songs on this record are very similar, so it is hard to pick a favorite.
Sure, I think that's
Yeah.
fair.
But my all my choice nugs or all my choice nugs, all my honorable mentions, and me, I love the weird different vibe on that song. It's
Mm.
like almost hard to describe. I love Song for Junior. It's like a Santana type
Yeah, yeah,
instrumental song. I love Picture This, kind of bossa nova, Brazilian type
yeah.
energy. I like Unite a lot because I love in the middle of the song is
Unite.
which is like D and B, like drum and bass, really cool fucking drum and bass in the middle of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And Instant Death was almost my second choice nug. A because
Oh,
I love that song, and I
mm.
just love the fucking guts that it took to end the album with that song.
Sure, yeah.
So that one almost became a choice nug. But my other choice nug, how many times do we see this happening with
Oh boy, all
albums?
right. So it's s- re- is it body moving?
It's Sneaking Out the Hospital.
Sneaking out the hospital, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Body Movement I was never a huge fan of. Still, I mean, it's like fine. It's a good party song. But Sneaking Out the Hospital was the first one when it played that I was just like, I don't remember this.
I if I remember correctly, this is one of the instrumentals on the record.
Yes.
Um,
And it's one of that's like every time I was listening to the album, because it's like the eighth track or ninth track on the record, every time it guard, and it was such a welcomed shift in
mm,
energy and vibe.
yeah,
And it's I feel like I needed all those weird instrumental full band songs to keep me engaged in the album because it's such a great
sure.
thing to just have on in the background. But to really keep me engaged and listening and paying attention, those instrumental songs were what did it for me.
Yeah, well, the instrumental songs, this one especially is very groovy. It's a lot of percussion. It's
Yeah,
kind
tons
of
of
these
bells and wood blocks and
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
There's some DJ scratches. There's like these bass chords that are being played the whole
Yeah, it
time.
sounds like power chords on the
Yeah, yeah,
bass. It has
yeah.
a distinctive like New York Latin feel
Mm.
to it. It almost sounds like a Cypress Hill beat.
Yeah, sure, I could see that.
You know what I mean? Like Latin
Yeah.
lingo, like something that they would have rhymed over. And I could just hear Be Real's voice on this, and Send Dog just like something saying just kind of yell mumbling something in the background. But yeah, Sneaking Out of the Hospital was like every time I heard it, I was like, oh, I love that they did this. And then I'm reminded every
Yeah.
time as the album goes on, I'm like, oh, they do this multiple times on this record. And it's like kind of brings back the Paul's Boutique vibe of Beastie Boys that it's like they just kind of they show you that they're more than just like three dudes yelling into a mic. you know, and I think it's
Yeah.
Sneaking Out the Hospital is such a great show of that.
Yeah. I think so too. I think it could. I mean, one of them could have done some vocals over this thing. You know, I'm
Easily.
sure they could have figured it out. For whatever reason, they just like, no, the instrumental's good enough. Like, we don't need vocals.
Yeah, and there's a couple of tracks that we've mentioned that has like a female vocalist on it. I'm just like, who is that?
Yeah, yeah, right. I believe the one for Picture This was like the lead singer of a New York band, that they were probably like playing around with.
Or Picture This. Yeah,
Um,
Brooke Williams was on Picture This, and then like
mm,
Instant Death, they don't have any vocals attached to it, even though there's definitely a female vocalist. And Nishida is she shows up on a couple of tracks. I'm like, I don't know who these people are.
yeah, sure.
Song for Junior has someone named Jill Cuniff on it, who it's I think it's just like New York friends, New York musician friends that showed up, but it's just cool. They got these no-name people. You know, at the time it's like, the record label wanted them to get fucking Ashanti as the singer or one of those versus these no-name people, you know?
Yeah, sure.
No,
But
no, not throwing shade at Ashanti, but like,
it seems like they chose the people that were close by that were in their fucking posse, you
maybe
know?
even hanging out in the studio. They're just like,
Yeah, I don't
oh
know.
man,
Who
I
knows?
think you'd sound great on this or something. Like I love that. Yeah, man, really impactful, weird record. And I would love for someone more educated than us to really explain to me the cultural impact of this album 25 years later, because I don't think it's necessarily relevant 25 years
Well, I
later.
mean, it's not like anyone's talking about it as far as I
Right.
know.
It's
You
not
know, if people
relevant.
are talking about Beastie Boys, they're usually talking about different albums.
Yeah. We're talking
But
about, yeah, like the good old days of BC Boys, or talking about MCA and what the guys are doing now. But yeah,
yeah,
I
whatever.
don't think this album is necessarily relevant anymore, but I know that there's a cultural impact that it has not been studied. And I'm just so curious what it is. I want someone to vocalize it better than we have.
Well, and that's y'all's call to go into the comments and kind of
That's a listener's job.
flex your fucking brain muscles.
Yeah,
Tell us
man.
what you thought about the album, what you think about this album. Are we overhyping it too much? Do you feel like it's an underrated? I mean, it still got number one. It sold a lot of copies.
Oh yeah.
It's not like it's an underground like album or anything. Like people know this album. It's just I feel like I don't know. I've never known anyone who's listened to it aside from me and you.
Yeah, exactly, right? And it's like I know at the time, me and all my friends loved Intergalactic, but it's like, what has this album become for a lot of people? And I'm curious what it is, because this is literally on multiple countries' best of 1998 lists, like best albums of the year.
Mm. And it
Multiple.
deserves it.
And
I
it deserves
love
it.
this fucking album.
It was a huge deal. It was a huge, huge deal when it came out, and I felt the energy shift, because it was right after this when Eminem blew up also, and
Mm.
I felt this cultural shift happening as a hip hop fan when this came out, and I feel like they kind of like broke the levees, and I want to know what the result of that has been culturally. I think from a, an ignorant perspective, I could probably point to like Lil Uzi Vert and the people that we've already mentioned as like these guys that feel like they don't need to prove themselves from a street hustle perspective, that
Yeah.
it's like I can just own that I grew up in a middle class suburban neighborhood, and it's like I don't need to pretend to be anything else than
Yeah,
that.
sure.
So I see that kind of honesty and that comfortability of just being yourself in hip hop now more than I did when I was a kid. So maybe that has some of that, maybe that is owed a little bit to the Beastie Boys in general, and maybe even this album for how big it got. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. But it's really fascinating. It's a really, really fun record to listen to. And I definitely want to know what everyone else thinks about this album. Like, is this it? I wouldn't be surprised if this is someone's favorite record, you know? And I want to know
Yeah,
why.
sure.
I want to know the impact that this had on people. Like, comment on our Spotify or on our, I don't know how to upload to YouTube. You're gonna have to show me how to upload videos without video on YouTube because
I
I haven't
I
done it.
I just put a picture on it.
And just, I don't know how to do. I'll just show the old man how to do that later. But
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, man, I definitely want to hear people's opinions and like what did we miss? Because I feel like there's a lot that we could
Mm,
have touched on that we didn't.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, okay. That's the episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week. What are we talking about, Lucas? Do you know?
I'm looking at my list of the stuff that I've been wanting to talk about for like 4.5 years. And you know, fuck it. I'm doing it.
Oh,
I want to listen to Bad Bad Not Good again because we talked about one of their
okay.
records before. I want to listen to their record called Four. It's a Roman numeral for four.
Four, and that is the one with one of the only Bad Bad Not Good songs I know, which is Time Moves Slow.
Right.
Um,
The singer of Future Islands.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's got Gay Trinata. It's got Mick Jenkins.
Telling you, man.
Yeah,
This is
very
a this
cool.
is their this was my introduction to them. I bought it on vinyl just on a whim. Didn't know who these guys were. I just saw the lineup on it. I'm just like, I gotta check this out. And I haven't listened to it in a while. So like I want to see if it still has the same impact on me. So album four by Bad Bad Not Good. That's what we're talking about next week.
Awesome, man. Looking forward to it.
Hell yeah. Ash, this was good.
Lucas, this was good. This was good.
This was a good.
There you go. Match my fucking freak.
Yeah. Oh, God, I can't wait to just press stop.